Ian Garry has been in the news this past week for all the wrong reasons. There's no UFC event this weekend, so he's been front and center. And while I'm sure you guys would love to hear my opinion on all the stuff that's going on, from the things that are going on with Sean Strickland and Ian Garry to stuff that's been exposed through his wife, I don't need to do that. Every other YouTuber has basically covered this. MMA Guru did a great video on this. You've got Lucas Tracy. You've got Red Pill MMA, who's basically been on this from the hop. So go watch all their content. That's not really what this video is about. This video is about the fact that Ian Garry's got a huge fight in a couple weeks, and I think this is a total distraction and a fight that he may not win now because of all this stuff that is going on outside the cage. And I just think it's stuff that could have been easily avoided, and Ian Garry only has himself to blame for some of the antics. And we'll start first with the latest thing, which is this whole Sean Strickland and Ian Garry beef that's been going on. Strickland made a video, obviously talking about Ian Garry needing to divorce his wife and all these different things. But here's Ian Garry sending DMs to Sean Strickland. We have the messages here. Ian Garry saying, messaging Sean Strickland, if you choose to continue to spread knowing from the source is not true and you're partaking in a harassment, that's a defamation of character, smart move would be to take it down. So he's threatening Sean Strickland. What on earth did Ian Garry think Sean Strickland was going to do by getting these messages? That's the first thing we need to talk about here. Like, on what planet did you think Sean Strickland is just going to, and this is not going to be a great Sean Strickland impression, but him saying, you know what, Ian Garry, you're right, man. I messed up. I'm going to take the tweets down. I'm sorry, man. You're a good dude. Do you really think he'd say that? No, of course not. He's going to go the offensive. And that's what he says here. He says, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a guy who's trying to get help for a CUCK. Don't think I should say that on here. Sue me. Get in line. There are a few in front of you. I would have respected you more if you threatened me with violence. Sean, what you're doing is spreading hate, lies, and harassment is helping. I'm helping you here, giving you the heads up. Like, dude, he's trying to sue Sean Strickland in the middle of fight. Like, he's fighting in a couple weeks here against Vicente Luque. This is a very big fight for him. And he's going after Sean Strickland, a guy who's not even in his weight class. Like, I could understand if this was Colby Covington and maybe there's an angle here about getting a fight down the line here. He's not going to fight Sean Strickland. This to me is just such a total waste of mental space here. And I'm kind of getting the same vibes of what we had with Israel Adesanya and the whole dog situation, which of course MMA Guru did an entire video on this leading up to his fight with Strickland. Now, Adesanya never engaged with Guru to my knowledge or anything like that, but it was a distraction. And I think to a small degree did play a role in why Adesanya maybe didn't look himself in that fight, because there was all that stuff people were talking about on social media, and Adesanya reads that stuff. So I think this is just kind of giving me vibes of the same thing where, Gary's doing everything but focusing on the fight with Luque. He's not getting to train at Kill Cliff because he's fighting Luque, who's obviously training there. There's the stuff about Leon Edwards. Like, there's so many distractions here for Ian Garry going into this fight that I just think is kind of concerning. And as much as people are kind of, jumping on a side here, whether it's your, pro Ian Garry or you're against Ian Garry here, the fact of the matter is people are not talking about the fight. And that's the most important thing here, because this is not an easy fight for Ian Garry. And just want to remind people a little bit that Ian Garry, for the most part, let's bring up his record, has kind of had not an easy path, but a very strategic path by the UFC here. 26 years old, undefeated, 13-0. Let's look at the first couple fights. And I don't have an issue with this, by the way. Like, I think if you're building a fighter up in the UFC, you want to build them up slowly. You don't want to feed them to the wolves. That's not how you build a prospect here. But first fight was against Jordan Williams. That was a fight where he actually got hit a bit in that fight, ended up winning. Jordan Williams not in the UFC. Fair enough. Darian Weeks, also not in the UFC, I don't believe. Got a decision win there. Gabe Green, Keenan Song. Like, these are all non-ranked fighters. They're slowly building him up bit by bit. I think they knew Rodriguez was not training for this fight. He ended up getting that win. That was a good win there. And then he was supposed to fight Jeff Neal, which was a good test. Neal was ranked. Neal's out of the fight. They give him Neil Magny, who we know has been finished before. And, Magny, I think at this stage in his career, and this is all respect to Neil Magny, I don't think he's a contender. He's a guy that they kind of use to build other guys off of. That's why Magny right now is fighting Mike Malott. They're trying to build Malott up, right? They're not trying to get Neil Magny a win here, but that's aside the point here. So he's fighting a guy in Luque who's a former training partner who had an incredible performance against Rafael dos Anjos in his last fight. I mean, he beat the brakes off Rafael dos Anjos, surprised everyone, looked like the old Luque in that fight. So this is a fight that is very important for Ian Garry. It's a fight that ultimately he needs to win. And you don't see Luque worried about any of this stuff, right? Like, he's just in there training. He just saw one of his training partners win the Bellator title, Jason Jackson. Like, he's in a good spot right now. Ian Garry is dealing with everything outside of the fight with Luque. And I think that's kind of interesting here. And I don't think enough people are putting focus on how Garry could lose this fight, and this could take a really sharp turn in his career, because the plan right now, I'm sure, for the UFC is to keep Garry undefeated until he's getting close to a title shot. They have put a lot of effort and time into Ian Garry promoting him, putting him in the right situations. He's been pretty much every card he's been on has been a big event. I mean, this is one of the best, if not the best pay-per-view this year. And he's on it, and he's on the main card too. Like, I don't think people are looking enough at it, that this other stuff is kind of a bit of a distraction here. And, the other thing that we got to look at as well is that it was a bit of a risky fight, him fighting Luque, right? Like, Luque is not a huge name in the weight class, but Luque's got knockout power. He's the only guy to knock out Bilal Muhammad in the UFC. Like I said, he looked great against Rafael dos Anjos in his last fight. And even if Garry beats Luque, which I did a prediction video on this. I think on paper right now, Garry should win this fight. I don't think it's a guarantee. And I think Luque is also a tough guy to finish. Like, it's not like he's going to go out there and I think have a Jeff Neal performance. I think it's going to be a much harder fight. The last thing I wanted to mention on this, and I've seen a few people make these types of comments. I know Chris Curtis came out, who's actually Sean Strickland's like best friend, kind of saying the opposite of basically telling people to leave Ian Garry alone. I've seen some other people make this comment here. And look, I agree. It's not in good taste to bring up people's families or anything like that. I mean, I don't think anyone is saying anything out of line. I mean, the stuff about the last name, maybe, but she does have a book out there. Like, that's true. Like, people questioning that and having some thoughts on it, I don't think there's anything bad about bringing that up. It's public information. It's not like this book was a secret and no one knew anything about it. But the biggest thing for me is this. Ian Garry made a really dumb comment at Vicente Luque. So Vicente Luque is getting baptized, I believe. Yeah, so Luque took to Instagram to take photos of himself getting baptized, is captioning the post. I believed in him and I've seen how much he's blessed me with all my life. In good moments and in the hard ones, he will always get me through and strengthen me. Now I walk the way he guides me to his kingdom. Thank you, Jesus. And then Ian Garry runs underneath. December 16th, he'll be standing in front of you, tall, blonde, and all powerful. Stupid comment. Like, here's the thing. Garry has this habit, and he did this with Jeff Neal as well, where like he's trying to like create a beef in the fight, but it's like you're picking two of the people that like there's no reason to do that. Like, him saying bad stuff to Colby, I can understand because Colby says bad stuff about other people. That may be a future fight. That's understandable. And I realize he is fighting Luque, but like, you shouldn't talk about people's religion, right? Like, that's kind of offside regardless. I mean, you talk about people's religion, you're going to have people getting really upset with that. And I just think this wasn't necessary. And this doesn't, to me, sell the fight. Like, there's so many different ways that Garry could talk about this matchup. Garry could say that, hey, look, I felt like I was better than Luque in training. Like, you shouldn't really reveal training secrets, but like, even that's better than him, like trying to kind of mock him for having because Luque's having a serious moment here about being religious and getting baptized. And Garry's going in and trying to make it about him. Just a bad look here. So kind of what I'm getting at here is Garry's going for the jugular here. He's talking about someone's religion. That's offside, family and religion. That's a thing that, in my opinion, is very much offside. So people going after him now, I don't really blame them. Garry brought this on himself, the same way he brought on people going after him for the Jeff Neal mugshot. Like, Jeff Neal didn't do anything to him, and now he's wearing his mugshot. It's like, it's kind of distasteful. So same sort of thing here. I see people defending Garry and talking about how, it's not right that people are going after his family. I don't think people should go after his family, but like, if you're talking about his wife's book, that's public information. And also, he brought this on himself. Like, you shouldn't be talking like this. This isn't even good trash talk. Like, I don't know who's around Garry, but some of the moves he's made from, like I said, DMing it's Sean Strickland and trying to, threaten him, I guess. And number two, this comment with Luque is just bad advice. And it's just not, I don't think it's not helping him win fans. If anything, I think it's making him lose fans. So that's my thoughts on this, is that this could end up biting Ian Garry in the ass, and he may lose this fight against Luque. And if we're looking at the odds right now, Gary's almost a 3-1 favorite. I would imagine the odds are going to get a little bit closer, because people have to factor this in, that all this stuff is taking him away from training and it's a distraction. So, and people are going to bring this up leading into the fight, because, Garry does check his social media. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. What are your thoughts on this whole Garry situation? Do you think this is a distraction? Do you think this will impact his fight with Vicente Luque? I think to a certain degree it will. Follow me on Twitter, X, Instagram, TikTok, @LynchOnSports. I'm James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.